Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today. We're tackling South Africa's Rainbow Nation ideal. 30 years after apartheid ended, we're going to see how this whole vision is actually holding up. And we've got some really interesting sources to help us out here, right? We've got some academic papers. Those always get deep into the philosophy behind everything. Then we've got historical articles for context. And even some travel blogs. So, we'll see how South Africa presents itself to the rest of the world.
You've even got a YouTube discussion in there, which I think is really fascinating because it gives us that chance to hear contrasting viewpoints from everyday folks who are dealing with these ideas
Yeah, exactly.
in real time.
So we'll be hearing from academics and historians and travelers and, folks just send it off on YouTube. Quite a range.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the term Rainbow Nation. That was coined by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, right?
That's right, yeah. He envisioned a unified, multiracial South Africa, kind of emerging from the ashes of apartheid. And that phrase really did capture global attention. But you have to remember the historical context here, right? The end of apartheid wasn't just some political shift. It was a huge societal upheaval.
Right.
You had Nelson Mandela's leadership, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Oh, the TRC.
The TRC, yeah, which was this incredible, attempt to heal the wounds of apartheid by focusing on truth-telling and forgiveness rather than trials and punishment.
Wow.
It was a monumental effort to mend a deeply divided nation.
The TRC is especially fascinating to me, that whole idea of victims and perpetrators would come face to face and share their stories. It feels almost revolutionary.
It was incredibly ambitious, right? They aimed to address the horrors of the past, but they also wanted to lay the foundation for the shared future. However, 3 decades on, the question is, how has that vision actually fared in reality?
Well, I mean, that's where our YouTube discussion gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because there's some seriously clashing viewpoints. One speaker argues that you can't force true integration. It has to happen organically.
That's a good point, yeah. Can you really legislate social cohesion? Can you force people to abandon prejudices that have been ingrained over generations?
Right, right. But then another person in the discussion, they're like, hold on a second. Just look at how segregated our social circles still are. And they talk about the layout of the cities and towns.
Oh, wow.
They even talk about flying over Johannesburg and seeing how sharply divided the neighborhoods still are, along racial and economic lines.
Yeah.
That really highlights how the legacy of apartheid is literally etched into the landscape.
Yeah, that's a perfect illustration of what one of the academic papers calls the spatial legacy of apartheid. It argues that the way cities and towns were structured during apartheid, it continues to impact social interactions today.
Oh, interesting.
Think about it. If you grow up in a neighborhood that's predominantly one race or socioeconomic group, your exposure to other communities, it's limited.
Right, right.
And that limited exposure can then lead to misconceptions and reinforce those existing prejudices. It's a vicious cycle.
It is, it is.
So while the government might not be actively enforcing segregation anymore, the spatial patterns created during apartheid, they're still subtly but powerfully shaping social dynamics.
So if we're being honest, we have to acknowledge that there's it's a pretty serious critiques of the Rainbow Nation ideal.
Yeah.
And one article, it's from the Pan-African Review, it really digs into this.
What's interesting is that this article doesn't shy away from pointing out the shortcomings, right? They argue that the Rainbow Nation myth, while hopeful, overlooks the deep-seated issues that still plague South Africa today.
Yeah, yeah. They mention unresolved colonial legacies, right? They say those are fueling racial tensions, economic inequality creating resentment.
And very importantly, they highlight the slow pace of land reform, which is a major point of contention because land ownership in South Africa remains heavily skewed along racial lines. It's a direct consequence of colonial and apartheid policies.
Leading to the argument that for many South Africans, the Rainbow Nation, it feels more like a distant dream than a lived reality.
Yeah. And the academic paper connects this to what it calls the triple evils.
The triple evils.
Yeah, of racism, poverty, and violence. Think of it like a tangled knot. Racism, poverty, and violence are all intertwined. You can't pull on one strand without affecting the others. So to truly address poverty, you also need to tackle racism and violence and vice versa.
That triple evils concept is so powerful because it shows how deeply connected these issues are, right?
Yeah.
It's not enough to address them in isolation.
Yeah.
You got to approach them as a whole.
Exactly. The Rainbow Nation vision, while aspirational, it needs to fully grapple with the complexities of these interconnected challenges if it wants to become a reality.
Now, in the midst of all this, there's Desmond Tutu and his philosophy of Ubuntu. And exploring this has been like a real aha moment for me. It's this beautiful African philosophy. It emphasizes interconnectedness, community, shared humanity.
Ubuntu is a profound concept. It shifts the focus from the individual, which is so central to Western thought, to the understanding that our well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of others.
Right.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity and the strength that comes from community.
So how does Tutu specifically connect Ubuntu to the Rainbow Nation ideal?
He argues that it's not about erasing differences, but recognizing our shared humanity despite them. He believes that forgiveness and reconciliation, which are cornerstones of Ubuntu, are essential for building a just future.
And there's that striking point he makes about how even the perpetrators of apartheid were dehumanized by the system.
Yes.
Right.
And that's why forgiveness is so crucial in Tutu's eyes. It's not about condoning the actions, but recognizing that everyone, even those who have inflicted harm, is capable of change and deserves compassion.
Okay, I get that forgiveness is important, but I'm still wrestling with how that plays out in practical terms, right?
Yeah.
How do you forgive such atrocities?
Well, Tutu believes that forgiveness is not just a moral imperative, but a practical necessity for moving forward. He famously said, "There is no future without forgiveness."
Wow. No future without forgiveness.
Yeah.
That's powerful. He also uses that analogy of the light bulb to explain Ubuntu, right?
Yes, he does. He talks about how a light bulb might brag about its brilliance, but it can only shine because it's connected to a power source, to a network of wires. It reminds us that even something as seemingly independent as a light bulb is dependent on a larger system.
So even something that appears self-sufficient is still part of a larger web of connections.
Precisely. And that's the heart of Ubuntu. It's the recognition that we are all interconnected, that our individual well-being relies on the well-being of the community, and that true strength comes from collaboration and recognizing our shared humanity.
It's a beautiful way to look at it. It makes you realize that the Rainbow Nation isn't just about political unity. It's about building a society based on empathy and compassion and understanding. It's about seeing those connections everywhere.
Exactly. It's about understanding that our destinies are intertwined and that building a just and equitable future requires a collective effort rooted in the principles of Ubuntu.
Now, to get a different perspective, let's look at how the Rainbow Nation is presented to the outside world. Our travel blogs provide some interesting insights here.
They do. The travel blogs reveal kind of like the carefully curated image that South Africa projects to tourists, highlighting specific experiences, like visiting the Kruger National Park, exploring the garden route, and even engaging in township tours, which are often presented as opportunities for cultural immersion. They show off incredible wildlife safaris, cosmopolitan cities, and vibrant cultural tours.
They paint a pretty rosy picture of South Africa. But do these experiences actually reflect the complexities of South African society?
That's a great question. While these experiences showcase the beauty and diversity of the country, they might not capture the full picture, including the challenges, inequalities, and ongoing struggles that exist beneath the surface.
So it's like a snapshot, not the whole story.
Right. And it's essential for tourists and anyone engaging with South Africa from the outside to be aware of this, to understand that the Rainbow Nation is an ongoing project, a journey, not a destination.
And within that journey, we have to think about the diverse cultural identities that make up South Africa. How do they define themselves within the framework of the Rainbow Nation? How do those individual threads weave into the larger tapestry?
That's crucial. True unity isn't about erasing differences, but about respecting and celebrating the uniqueness of each cultural group while recognizing the common threads that bind them together.
It's about that delicate balance between individuality and belonging.
Exactly. And the Rainbow Nation concept, when thoughtfully applied, can provide a framework for navigating that balance.
So where do we go from here? What does the future hold for this dream of a Rainbow Nation?
Well, one of the academic papers talks about the already and the not yet of the Rainbow Nation.
I like that. What's already been achieved and what still needs to be done.
Right. They acknowledge the significant progress made since the end of apartheid, but emphasize that the journey toward true equality and justice is far from over. They highlight student protests like #FeesMustFall as a prime example of the ongoing struggles for equality and justice.
#FeesMustFall was such a powerful movement. It drew attention to the inequalities in access to education, which is a fundamental pillar of a just society.
Absolutely. It showed that while the legal barriers of apartheid have been dismantled, systemic barriers still persist.
And speaking of systemic issues, the Mandela Foundation lecture we have, um, it really digs into contemporary issues like poverty alleviation and economic empowerment.
It does, and it's here that we see Tutu's continued commitment to social justice. He's critical of Black economic empowerment, or BEE, arguing that it has often benefited a small elite rather than the masses who were most marginalized by apartheid. He's even advocating for a basic income grant as a way to address the deep-seated poverty that continues to grip South Africa.
It's fascinating to see Tutu, who played such a crucial role in the fight against apartheid, now holding the post-apartheid government accountable to the ideals of the Rainbow Nation.
He's not afraid to challenge anyone, even his allies. He recognizes that the journey toward a truly just and equitable South Africa is ongoing and requires constant vigilance.
Wow. This has been such an eye-opening conversation already. What are some of the key takeaways for our listeners so far?
I think the most important takeaway is that the Rainbow Nation is a work in progress. It's a bold vision, but it requires ongoing reflection, critical engagement, and a commitment to addressing the complexities of South Africa's past and present.
It's a journey that demands courage and compassion, and a willingness to engage with diverse perspectives, just as we've done in this deep dive so far.
And ultimately, it's a journey that invites us all to consider our roles in building a more just and equitable world, both within South Africa and beyond.
This has been fantastic, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's pause here. When we come back, we'll delve deeper into specific examples and stories that really bring these concepts to life.
I'm looking forward to it. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Me too. It's one of those topics that it just keeps unfolding the more you learn about it.
Right. It's complex.
Yeah.
And nuanced, which is why it's so important to explore it from multiple angles.
So to ground this even further, let's get into some specifics. Our historical articles are a great place to start. They talk about key events like the Soweto Uprising, which was this major student protest against apartheid back in '76.
The Soweto Uprising was a real turning point in the fight against apartheid. Thousands of Black students took to the streets to protest the enforced use of Africans in schools.
Yeah.
It was seen as the symbol of oppression.
Right. Yeah.
It was such a powerful demonstration of resistance, but also incredibly tragic.
Yeah.
The government's response was so brutal, and so many young lives were lost.
The Soweto Uprising became, it became a symbol of the anger and frustration felt by Black South Africans, particularly the youth. It really exposed the brutality of the apartheid regime to the world, and it galvanized international condemnation.
Yeah. And it's a stark reminder that even in the face of such intense oppression, the human spirit's desire for freedom and equality, it just can't be silenced.
Absolutely. It's essential to remember these historical events and understand how they shaped South Africa's path.
Our sources also mention the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which we touched on earlier. It was such a bold and unique endeavor. The TRC was truly unprecedented. They sought to deal with the atrocities of apartheid, not through punishment and retribution, but through truth-telling, acknowledgement, and forgiveness.
Yeah, it was a space where victims could share their stories, have their pain recognized, and perpetrators could confess their crimes and seek amnesty.
It was an intensely emotional and difficult process, for everyone involved, but it was also seen as this crucial step towards national healing.
But our sources point out that the legacy of the TRC it's complicated. Some people argue that it didn't go far enough in holding perpetrators accountable.
Right. There's an ongoing debate about whether justice and reconciliation are truly compatible. Did the TRC prioritize forgiveness over accountability?
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
And there are no easy answers. But the TRC undeniably brought the horrors of apartheid to light and provided a degree of closure for many victims.
And it revealed the systemic nature of those injustices, implicating not just individuals, but institutions and ideologies.
But as that article from the Pan-African Review argues, those systemic injustices, they haven't been fully addressed.
Right. They argue that while the Rainbow Nation narrative is inspiring, it also risks obscuring the persistent inequalities, particularly in areas like, economic empowerment and land ownership.
Yeah. This brings us back to Tutu and his philosophy of Ubuntu. it seems like such a powerful counterpoint to the divisions and inequalities that still exist in South Africa.
Ubuntu is all about the interconnectedness of humanity, the understanding that we are all bound together and our well-being is intertwined. It's a radical shift from the individualistic mindset that dominates Western thought.
Right.
Yeah.
It challenges us to consider the needs of the community and prioritize empathy and compassion over self-interest.
Tutu believed that Ubuntu was the key to unlocking the true potential of the Rainbow Nation. He saw it as the foundation for building a just and equitable society where everyone feels valued.
And it's a philosophy that resonates far beyond South Africa's borders,
Yeah.
right? I mean, in a world that feels increasingly polarized, Ubuntu offers a roadmap for building bridges of understanding and compassion.
I completely agree. It's a reminder that that we are all part of a shared humanity and that our fates are interconnected. It's a call to embrace our common ground while celebrating our differences.
And to recognize that true strength lies in unity, not division. Now, our travel blogs offer a glimpse into how the Rainbow Nation is presented to the world, and it's clear that South Africa has a lot to offer visitors.
The travel blogs, they showcase the country's incredible natural beauty,
Mm-hmm.
highlighting experiences like wildlife safaris in places like Kruger National Park, where you
Wow.
can, you can see the big five and other amazing animals in their natural habitat.
Right.
Yeah.
They also feature vibrant cities like Cape Town, with its iconic Table Mountains and beautiful waterfront.
And many of them talk about the Garden Route, this stunning stretch of coastline with incredible views and diverse landscapes.
Lots of them emphasize the opportunities for cultural experiences, particularly township tours,
Mm.
which are often presented as a way to interact with local communities and learn about their culture and history.
Those tours can be valuable, but it's crucial to approach them thoughtfully and respectfully, ensuring that they are genuinely about cultural exchange and not just a form of entertainment or voyeurism.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's important to be mindful of the potential for exploitation in tourism,
Mhm.
especially, in a country with South Africa's history.
Responsible tourism is essential. It's about engaging in meaningful interactions, supporting local businesses, and contributing to the well-being of the communities you visit.
So the travel blogs paint an enticing picture of South Africa, but they also raise important questions about how we can engage with different cultures ethically and sustainably.
That's a conversation we should be having about all tourism, really, not just in South Africa.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between experiencing new places and respecting the people and environments we encounter.
Right. At the end of the day, it's about recognizing the shared humanity in everyone we meet, wherever we go in the world.
Now, shifting gears a bit, our sources also touch on the role of young people in shaping the future of the Rainbow Nation.
That's a crucial aspect of this conversation. The younger generation is inheriting a complicated legacy. They're dealing with the lingering effects of apartheid while also facing new challenges like economic inequality and climate change.
They're not afraid to demand change, right?
Yeah.
They're pushing for social justice,
Yeah.
greater equality, and a future that truly embodies the Rainbow Nation ideal.
They're using social media to organize, art to express themselves, and protests to make their voices heard. They're demanding to be part of the conversation.
The hashtag Fees Must Fall movement is a prime example of this. It brought much needed attention to the issue of access to education, which is still impacted by the inequalities of the past.
Hashtag Fees Must Fall was a powerful demonstration of the collective action and activism of young people across South Africa. It showed that the struggle for equality is ongoing and requires constant vigilance.
Yeah, and it wasn't just about tuition fees, right? It was about addressing the systemic barriers that prevent many young people from accessing quality education.
Exactly. It was about demanding a more just and equitable future.
The Mandela Foundation lecture is interesting because it shows, it shows Tutu himself challenging the post-apartheid government.
Yes. It's fascinating to see him critique the slow pace of economic transformation and argue that the benefits of democracy haven't reached everyone, especially those who were most disadvantaged by apartheid.
Yeah, he's especially critical of Black economic empowerment, suggesting that it hasn't always lived up to its promises and has sometimes benefited the elite more than the masses.
And he passionately advocates for a basic income grant as a necessary step toward alleviating the poverty that continues to affect millions of South Africans.
It's inspiring to see him continuing to fight for social justice and hold those in power accountable, even when it means criticizing his own allies.
He understands that the journey toward a truly just and equitable society is a long one, and it requires challenging the status quo, even when it's uncomfortable.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what are some of the key questions our listeners should be considering about the future of the Rainbow Nation?
I think the biggest question is this vision fading, or is it still a goal worth striving for? We've explored the complexities, the successes, and the setbacks.
We've heard perspectives full of hope and others tinged with disappointment. We've seen both the beauty and the ugliness, the progress and the stagnation.
Ultimately, the future of the Rainbow Nation, it lies with the people of South Africa, especially the younger generations who are shaping their own vision for the country.
And it comes down to the choices we all make. Do we embrace the values of Ubuntu? Do we build bridges of understanding and work towards a more just and equitable world?
Or do we allow the divisions of the past to dictate the future? Do we give in to cynicism, or do we believe that a different world is possible?
These are the questions that linger as we delve further into this fascinating and evolving story.
And they're questions that deserve our attention, reflection, and continued engagement. Because the vision of a unified, just, and compassionate South Africa is a vision that has implications for us all.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to move on to the final part of our deep dive. When we come back, we'll explore some final insights and reflect on what we've learned about this complex and inspiring journey.
I'm excited to continue the conversation. Stay with us.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into South Africa's Rainbow Nation.
Yeah, I'm ready to kind of synthesize everything we've talked about and see what lasting impressions we're left with, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Going through all this material, you know what really struck me? It was Tutu's conviction that the Rainbow Nation, it isn't just about political or social unity.
He really emphasizes the spiritual dimension, doesn't he? It's about recognizing our shared humanity on a much deeper level.
It is. We've talked about the practical challenges, the policies, the protests, but Tutu's vision, it's rooted in something much more profound. This idea that, like, we're all connected, like threads in a tapestry.
That's one of the most powerful metaphors he uses, and it perfectly captures the essence of his philosophy. It highlights the richness that diversity brings while acknowledging the strength that comes from being woven together.
And it also made me think about the role of faith communities in building this Rainbow Nation. Tutu clearly believes they have a crucial part to play.
He sees churches and other faith communities as spaces where people from different backgrounds can come together and build relationships and challenge injustice.
And as platforms to advocate for those who are marginalized.
Exactly. Yeah. For Tutu, faith isn't about retreating from the world's problems, but about actively engaging with them and working towards positive change.
Which explains why he was so vocal against apartheid, even when it was dangerous to do so. He saw it as a moral obligation to speak truth to power.
And he continues to speak out against injustice, even within the post-apartheid government. His criticisms of BE and his support for a basic income grant are examples of his unwavering dedication to social justice.
He doesn't shy away from challenging anyone, does he? Even those he agrees with on other issues.
No, he holds fast to his principles even when it's unpopular, and he does it all with this incredible sense of humor. He can deliver a sharp critique, then make you laugh in the next breath.
Yeah. It's amazing how he can, like, disarm people with humor and make tough conversations a little easier.
It's a real gift. It allows him to connect with people on a human level while still conveying a powerful message. But make no mistake, his message is serious. We can't afford to become complacent. The journey toward a truly just and equitable South Africa is far from over.
And it's a journey that requires each of us to play our part. We need to challenge our own biases, reach out to those who are different from us, and speak out against injustice wherever we see it.
And it all comes back to that core idea of Ubuntu, recognizing our interconnectedness and understanding that our well-being is tied to the well-being of others. Building a better world requires a collective effort rooted in compassion and empathy and respect for the dignity of every human being.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much
Yeah.
and have even more to contemplate going forward.
I agree. It's been a powerful reminder that even in the face of immense challenges, the human spirit is capable of incredible resilience, hope, and transformation.
And that the dream of a rainbow nation, while still a work in progress, is a dream worth striving for, not just for South Africa, but for all of us.
To our listener, I'll leave you with these words from Desmond Tutu himself. We are made for goodness. We are made for gentleness. We are made for laughter. We are made to share. May that message inspire you and empower you to help create a world where those words are a reality for everyone.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep believing in the power of human connection to create a better future.